If my experience happened at 14 and I'm 72 now, hard to believe it has been over 50 years. Holy crap, I'm old. Even though I was raised in the large city of Olympia, Washington, my parents loved the outdoors and took me camping and hiking quite a bit. Every summer, they took me freestyle camping for 2 weeks, along with aunts, uncles, and numerous cousins. This particular summer, our family met up in Montana. My cousins Ian, Becky, Richard, and I were around the same age and into book series like The Land That Time Forgot. For fun, we would have these adventures looking for lost cities and dinosaurs in the forest. With Richard being in the Boy Scouts, he knew how to read the map and use a compass, so our folks trusted us not to get lost when we went out to explore on our own, just with the rule to be back before dark. We traveled maybe about 2 or so miles and were going through a patch of woods when Becky smacked into something hard enough to knock her down to the ground. Coming over to help her, we discovered she didn't run into a tree, but some kind of structure. After pulling several vines and tree branches away, we find it was a staircase leading up to the sky about 12 feet or so. Didn't dawn on us that it was unusual. We had been taken on trips to ancient sites with these type of stairs in the past. Except in this case, the stairs led to nowhere. We dug around the underbush expecting to see some type of ruins, but there were none. Checking out the staircase, it seemed to be made out of concrete, creating 17 narrow steps. Flanking each side on the bottom was a pole. I peeled away layers of moss and remember seeing some unrecognizable painted symbols underneath. Going by the trees growing around it and the moss on the stairs, it had been here a while. I put my foot on the first step and could feel an unusual sensation. The best way to describe the feeling was as if my body was a Geiger counter that was picking up an unknown vibration. I didn't like it and tried to convince the others the stairs might be dangerous or it looked old, but turned out to be strong as steel. It never wobbled as we climbed to the top. Looking right below us, we could barely make out what appeared to be a well. Elated, we get down and run over to it. It was around 5 or 6 feet in diameter and not a completely round shape, more squared. The base was made out of the same concrete and stood about a foot high. It was actually quite cool because it was covered by what looked like a black glass that fitted perfectly on top. I could make out our reflections a little as we stared into it. The thought going through my mind was the cupboard had nothing on it. No leaves, no sticks, not even dirt. It was like someone had cleaned it up with Windex. Becky took a rock and tried to scratch her initials into it, but that effort left no mark. Ian and Richard even took heavy rocks and threw them down hard on it. They just bounced off like tennis balls. Being so curious, we tried to push the cover down and sideways. It didn't budge. I don't remember whose stupid idea it was, but a game of dare started and we began taking turns walking across it. As time went on, I could hear thunder and see lightning in the distance. It was time to leave, but Ian wanted to walk across it one more time and be declared the winner. I'm leaning on the wheel wall opposite him when he jumps on it. I see, for a fraction of a second, this moment of extreme fear and astonishment in his eyes before he drops like a sack of potatoes into the well. Reaching out fast, he somehow grabs my arm to keep himself from plunging down, almost pulling me in with him. I screamed in pain because he about jerked my arm out of the socket. Richard came rushing over and grabbed Ian's other arm. I yell at Becky to come and help. She lifts Ian's arm that is holding on to mine. The relief of pain was almost overwhelming as his weight was removed. We start pulling him out, but it wasn't easy. Felt like he was stuck in mud. Let me tell you, it scared the shit out of all of us. After the rescue, we looked into the well, and all we saw was the dark. Couldn't figure out what Ian had been stuck in. His clothes were dry. It didn't make any sense. Afraid we might get into trouble for playing around something dangerous, we decided not to say anything about it or the stairs. Ian kept complaining his skin was burning the whole walk back to camp. I had no sympathy for him as a bolt of pain seared through my shoulder with each jarring step I took. My folks ended up having to take me and Ian to the emergency room the next day. I spent a month in a sling with a dislocated shoulder, while Ian was treated for a blister rash that covered most of his legs and feet. Because of the pain, he couldn't even put on pants and shoes. Took 3 months for the rash to heal, and Ian had to be homeschooled during that time. The doctor said he had an extreme allergic reaction to some kind of plant. Our best guess was he had been exposed to something inside that well. Even after all these years, the memory is so vivid. And it was something Ian would never forget either, because to this day, when he gets sick, the same ugly sores appear on his legs, and doctors still can't explain it. I think maybe this happened between 12 and 14 years old. It was such a long time ago. My memories may not be as sharp as they once were, but this one memory still haunts me to this day. I grew up on a 200-acre horse farm in Moneta, Virginia. Back then, there were no close neighbors, so I spent a lot of my time on my own, roaming our property. I knew it like the back of my hand. We had a 7-acre man-made pond with a dock for fishing, boating, and swimming. The path between the house and the pond had been there for 2 generations, making the ground well-worn and easy to follow. One morning, I decided to go fishing, bringing along my pal Leo, an old bloodhound hunting dog my daddy had retired a couple of years back. I had gotten some new lures and was busy admiring them, following the path on cruise control. As we came around the bend, Leo started barking. He sounded strange, his bark a cross between scared and ferocious. Fearing we might be near a bear had me stopping dead in my tracks. I glanced toward Leo, who was a few feet in front of me, and start scanning the area up ahead, looking for any movement and listening. It took a few minutes for my eyes to finally detect something that was out of the ordinary. I stare at the fork in the trail stupidly. What? Wait. Just last week I had been to the pond, and there wasn't a fork on the whole trail. but yet there it was. I could clearly make out the trail branching off to the right, but the trail on the left, it was distorted in a way, kind of out of focus until I concentrated on it. But this was the really weird part. Both trails looked exactly alike, as if one side of the trail was looking into a mirror and seeing its reflection. I know none of this is making any sense, but I'm telling you what I saw with my own two eyes. Leo starts growling between barks, his focus on the left trail. Not sure what to do, I make him sit while I walk down a bit on the trail forking to the right. Everything seemed normal. I go for the left one. After taking a few steps in, the sun did not seem as bright, and it was cooler. It was giving me the heebie jeebies. I back up and stand there, trying to decide if I should scratch the fishing trip and go back home when Leo takes off running down the left trail, barking the whole time. Screaming at him to come back, I go after him a few feet before stopping. Not ashamed to admit, I was scared. I kept glancing back up the path behind me, almost half afraid I was going to get lost, even though I only had gone in a few steps. Begging for Leo to come to me, I hear him barking, but it is getting fainter as he got further away. I don't remember how long I stood there calling his name before running back home to get my daddy. We traveled up and down the path until it got dark, but could not find the fork in the trail nor Leo. I may not have been the sharpest tool in my daddy's shed, but was smart enough to figure out if the path was gone, so was Leo. I cried all night long for my old friend. My story sounded so foolish. No wonder my parents didn't believe me. And who would blame them? I have asked myself so many times over the years, if Leo had not been with me, would I have unknowingly walked down the wrong path and ended up getting lost, never to be found again? I had nightmares for a long time afterwards of being in the woods and hearing Leo barking for me, and I would search and search and search, but never could find him.